Hello, UCAR. Peter Christensen here, coming to you from the CEO's desk. We're going to talk today about limited agency. Why do some people cringe when we say limited agency? So what we're talking about is it's an allowable situation in real estate, but it really is it's kind of unique and different. There's a lot of industries, say the legal profession, where we can't really represent both sides on an issue. It's prohibited. But in real estate, a broker and agent could represent a buyer and seller in the same transaction, right? And of course, it has some of its own pitfalls and it has some requirements. So one of those requirements is that, it's limited, right? So your fiduciary duties are limited in that you can't. One of your fiduciary duties is full disclosure, and one of your fiduciary duties is confidentiality. Obviously, you can't do that for both parties at the same time. You can't fully disclose confidential information about one side to the other and vice versa, or you'd be breaching one of those fiduciary duties. So you have to remain neutral, and you have to not favor and give confidential information about one to the other. And so what is it? What's the big deal? Well, it's a high liability transaction just right off the bat because you're dealing with both sides. So you're doubling the chance of something going wrong. And not only that, but if something does go wrong, you are now in the middle of it with both sides. And so that's why it's a little tricky. And where you're asked to stay neutral, you have the big danger is one side will perceive you're favoring the other, or gave up information you shouldn't have, or did something to their detriment for the favor of the other. And so that's why it is a little dicey. But let's take a step back. What does it take to do it? Well, you have to get the informed consent of both clients. So you give notice of the potential of a limited agency transaction in the agency agreements. It's in there saying it might happen, and okay, it might happen, but that's not permission. You have to get permission in a specific limited agency disclosure form. You have to get their approval in this form saying, now we've entered into this actual situation where I may represent both sides, and so, or our brokerage may represent both sides. So I need you to sign off on this. And it's what we call informed consent. It's a little different than just, hey, I need your signature on this. I need your consent. Okay, whatever. Boom, signs it. Informed consent requires you to explain the ramifications of the decision. So why is it limited? How will our relationship change? What are the limitations on what I can do for you after we enter into this limited agency arrangement? And either party can object to it, and then you've got to deal with it. You can't force them into it. So it takes a little extra work, and it's worth all that explanation to avoid some of the issues we spoke about earlier. Okay, but limited agency, I just want to be clear, it's kind of broad. So all clients of a brokerage are the broker's clients. And so your broker may not even be involved directly in the transaction, but one agent may be representing the buyer, a different agent within the same brokerage will be representing the seller. That's still a limited agency transaction, because the broker is in common and the broker is representing both parties. Even though technically broker may not be personally involved in either side of the transaction. But it can also be one agent or broker is directly representing both. Now, obviously, that seems a little more dangerous in my mind to represent personally a buyer and seller in the same transaction versus two different agents in a 150 agent brokerage, and they're each representing both sides. That feels a little like, okay, there's some separation there. They're getting individual representation, but it's still considered limited agency. So can you do it? Should you do it? That's a situation, case by case analysis, and I think it's also up to brokers to decide how their brokerages want to handle it. If they want to allow certain types of limited agency and not other types, and what kind of safeguards they want to put in place. But be respectful of the situation. Understand it is a tricky one. It is a higher liability situation than a standard representation would be. Can it be done? Yeah. And can it be done to the satisfaction of buyers and sellers? Yeah, sure. But make sure they're informed. Make sure you're following the rules. You understand your limitations, and that it is okay with your brokerage policies, and then treat it with some respect, and you should be fine. So hopefully this is helpful. Remember, this is not legal advice. This is legal information only. If you need specific legal advice, please contact your attorney. Thanks for tuning in.